Tonight, the victims of last summer's Danforth shooting file a class-action lawsuit against an American gunmaker. The $150 million lawsuit alleges the Smith Wesson handgun was negligently designed and manufactured. Plus,
in my mind, it says that the province isn't open for business. They're looking to close down businesses across the province.
The Ontario PCs are cancelling plans for a new light rail line in Hamilton, and they're blaming the previous Liberal government. And
no matter how small or unimportant that information may seem, please contact the police.
After hundreds of witnesses and even more tips from the public, police still have no answers in the investigation into the deaths of Barry and Honey Sherman. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. Victims of the Danforth shooting last summer have launched a class-action lawsuit against Smith Wesson, the U.S. company that manufactured the stolen handgun the shooter used to kill 2 people and injure 13 others. Reese Fallon and Juliana Kotsis were killed on July 22, 2018, when Faisal Hussein opened fire into busy cafes and restaurants along Danforth Avenue. The suit alleges that the gun manufacturer failed to incorporate what it calls smart gun technology into the weapon, a safety measure that prevents unauthorized users from firing the gun. The claim seeks $50 million in general damages and $100 million in punitive damages. Ken Price and his daughter are among the lead plaintiffs in the suit. Samantha Price was shot through the thigh during the attack. We spoke with Ken Price tonight about the family's decision to go forward with the suit.
Well, I think since this happened to our families in July of 2018, we've been trying to be very measured in terms of what we want to do. And first, we went to the government and said, we think you should change some behaviors around who should be entitled to guns. But then it quickly turns to, well, what about the guns themselves? And I think the idea really came to, well, what's going on with smart gun technology, and could that have been something that would have prevented things from happening the way they did on the Danforth that night? And that's what we believe.
Now, we reached out to Smith Wesson for comment, but haven't heard back. The allegations in the lawsuit have not been proven in court. A major about-face from the province today. After supporting plans for a Hamilton LRT during the election campaign, the Ford government now says it will cancel the 17-stop transit line, saying the cost of the transit project has ballooned. Natalie Nanowski has the details.
Outside of one of Hamilton's busy bus terminals, disappointment.
It would have been nice to have, because a lot of the buses are unpredictable. They don't show up when they're supposed to. Sometimes they go right past you.
It was going to create a lot of jobs for Hamiltonians, and to be honest, I'm a little bit upset about it.
The LRT was supposed to run across the city from McMaster University to Eastgate Mall and connect to a GO station. When word got out today that it was no longer happening, a crowd gathered at City Hall. The podium Transportation Minister Caroline Mulrooney was supposed to speak at was taken away, with her nowhere in sight. She eventually left the building with a police escort, only talking to reporters hours later at Queen's Park, blaming the previous Liberal government for not doing the math.
We hired an independent third party earlier this year to look into the numbers for the LRT. And we've received that report and have found that the cost is 5 times greater than the $1 billion that the Liberals had represented.
Hamilton's mayor called the move betrayal.
In my mind, it says that the province isn't open for business. They're looking to close down businesses across the province. We have three bidders that are procuring this, international bidders, respected international bidders that are now told to park their pens and go home.
I worry more about, okay, so what now? We've spent $200 million. What are we going to, who or what is going to, compensate for that? It still doesn't address new transit issues.
We continue to stand by that commitment of $1 billion for the city of Hamilton, and we will do that. So we announced today that we are going to put together a task force to study transit and transportation priorities for the city of Hamilton.
As for the other promised transit expansions in Mississauga and Toronto, so far, the government says those are going forward. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Hamilton.
Well, here in Toronto, transit fares are going up yet again. The TTC board looking to raise the price of a single ride by 10 cents. But the proposed bump sparked a heated exchange in a meeting this morning.
I am very measured. This is outrageous. There was no consultation whatsoever for members of our community to be part of this process.
You've made the.
And what I've made.
You've made the
point, and that is let us stop with the charade. Let's stop with the bullshit. Let's stop with this.
Again, a very pejorative statement.
It's not criticism.
No, it is a criticism of Councillor Callerall.
I questioned the process, and I questioned how this committee continues to support the process.
You're not.
It does not actually meet the needs of our
I'm going to ask someone to remove the deputant. Yeah, call security, please.
Oh, the TTC announced the fare increase Friday, leaving little time for the public to hear about the hike and voice their concerns. Meantime, Mayor John Tory is standing behind the TTC.
I support it simply because we are significantly increasing the support for the TTC from city taxpayers as a whole. You'll see that in the budget in January. There's a whole host of things we're doing, including hiring 50 more people, and I'm sorry we have to do it, but we're hiring 50 more people to help ensure that people are paying their fares.
The TTC says the increase will come into effect on March 1st and will create an additional $31.4 million in revenue. Well, a young girl is at SickKids with serious injuries tonight after she was hit by a fire truck this afternoon. It happened at Oakwood and Rosemount, that's just south of St. Clair West. The pumper truck was responding to a fire when the girl was hit. Now, police say its siren and lights were on. Toronto's fire chief says the girl is now in stable condition and there will be a full investigation into what happened. And talks have broken down between the province and the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, meaning high school teachers and 10 more school boards will likely be going ahead with a one-day strike on Wednesday. CBC Toronto has learned that sides were supposed to sit down again tomorrow, but the mediator says they're just too far apart to bother. High schools in 10 boards, including York, Halton, and the Kawarthas, will be affected by Wednesday's one-day strike. Talks won't resume now until January. And just 4 days remain until General Motors closes its large production plant in Oshawa. Thousands of people will lose their jobs just before the holidays. Greg Ross was in Oshawa today to speak with employees, many of whom are still contemplating their future.
Living the nightmare now.
Is that what it feels like?
That's exactly it.
Susan Crocky is one of the thousands of GM employees who are about to be out of work when the company closes its assembly plant in Oshawa later this week. At 57 years old, Crocky says she has serious concerns about her future.
At my age, in order for me to start somewhere else, no one's really going to want to hire me.
Today, Jerry Dias, the president of the union that represents GM workers, was in Oshawa. He chastised the company for allowing something like this to happen so close to the holidays.
I mean, I can't understand how this decision could be made at this time of the year, but it really has to do about the callousness.
But he says his main reason for being there was to help oversee the transition into a parts plant, a move that will save a few hundred jobs in Oshawa.
I'm going to be going into the plant to make sure that the commitment of maintaining the integrity as we switch to a plant that is building parts. I'm here today to make sure that that commitment is being fulfilled.
Rob Osborne was offered one of those jobs, but after 39 years with the company, he took a buyout instead to allow a younger employee to keep their job.
It's a shame. It's a shame that after 100 years of building products here.
Osborne says it was a tough decision. The company has been a part of his life since the day he was born.
My dad started in 1950, and back then it was in the old North plant, and it was called Material.
He says he's had uncles and cousins who have worked there as well, and he's made some good friends.
What's it going to be like for you walking out of these doors on Friday?
I'm probably going to have tears. And everybody will be hugging each other, and so again, I think the realization will be on Monday, when I don't have to get up to come to work. And I say, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with myself?
The union says even after Friday, it will continue to fight to bring jobs back.
It's not too late. As long as you've got bricks and mortars across the street, and like I said, we bargained to maintain the integrity of the plant, the ability to build future vehicles. As long as that ability is there and it's going to stay there, then we're not going to give up.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Oshawa.
Carla Kennedy joins us now with her first look at the forecast. No complaining about the weather overnight, because wait till you see what we could have had.
That's exactly right, Mike. You know, our temperatures are actually kind of near seasonal. I mean, this is where they should sit at this time of year in terms of our daytime highs that we're seeing. If you look around southern Ontario into eastern Ontario, a little different Ottawa, -6. So that was a colder spot today, but otherwise right there, kind of around the freezing mark, just below or just above. But it is the system that's going to be skirting just to the south of us that had it moved the track a little further north, we'd be seeing some significant snowfall. Let me show you kind of how closely it comes as we take you through the overnight hours. There's some of the snow precipitation just off the screen. And as we go into tomorrow morning, just a glancing blow. Not to say this isn't important for those of you watching from the Niagara region, because you'll likely pick up a few centimeters. Shouldn't be much more than that because it will move quite quickly. But if it were just a little further north, we'd be seeing more than what we will, which will likely be some light flurry activity that we'll get into. And then once that system moves on, winds will set up that will have another chance of getting into some scattered flurries later on Tuesday evening. Again, into Wednesday, could pick up a centimeter or so here or there. I'm going to get into those accumulations a little later in the show. Just know that tonight it is cool enough, -7, feeling like -12. Tomorrow afternoon, though, we should bounce back right there, close to the freezing mark or just above, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Investigators are urging the public to come forward with information in the deaths of Toronto philanthropists Honey and Barry Sherman, including people who have already submitted tips to private investigators hired by the Sherman family. John Lancaster explains.
It's been 2 years since Honey and Barry Sherman were found strangled inside their North Toronto mansion. Their home has since been demolished. But what's been rebuilt, it seems, is the once strained relationship between the couple's family and Toronto police. The head of the homicide squad read out this statement today on the family's behalf.
The Sherman family appreciates the hard work and dedication of the police officers working on this case. They are committed to working with us and have full confidence that the Toronto Police Service will solve this crime.
It wasn't always that way. In the early days after the murders, the Sherman family hired Toronto lawyer Brian Greenspan and a team of private investigators to run their own parallel investigation. The family complained police were mishandling the case. The Sherman's team set up its own tip line, which sifted through about 300 tips, about 100 more than police took in. No more, say police.
The work of the private investigative team hired by the family at the outset has been completed. And all we're doing now is moving the responsibility for collecting the information back to the police service where it should belong.
To boost the investigation, a new appeal for information, and a new email tip line. Still, some are worried about why the case hasn't been solved yet.
We're perplexed as neighbors and as friends and as people who knew them. We're perplexed as to why this hasn't been coming to a resolution and why we don't have any answers yet. I mean, it's saddening.
Family friend Paul Godfrey says it's good news police continue to keep the case active, even if the private investigation appears over.
As more time goes by, everyone begins to think, well, maybe they'll never catch them. But we have seen, as I said, in recent times, crimes being solved over a longer period of time. That doesn't give a lot of comfort to the family, but at least they know that the police are not closed the file, the police have not given up.
Police say they've already obtained 38 court orders to search properties and seize information, as well as interviewing more than 240 witnesses, all in this ongoing effort to find out who killed the billionaire philanthropists. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
Coming up after the break, a new report says total emissions in the GTA and Hamilton are falling. But it's not all good news. Vehicle emissions are actually on the rise. We'll explain why coming up. Some good news, bad news when it comes to efforts to fight climate change in the GTA. A comprehensive new report says on the plus side, emissions are going down. On the bad side, the progress isn't nearly enough. As Nick Boisvert tells us, one of the main reasons things are stalling is the decline of electric vehicles.
After crunching 2 years of data, Brian Purcell says it boils down to this.
We are making some progress on reducing emissions across the Greater Toronto-Hamilton area. We're not making progress nearly fast enough.
In a landmark report, his climate group broke down emissions from 2015 to 2017. And while they are declining, they'll have to do so about 4 times faster to meet 2030 reduction targets. Here's the latest breakdown. Buildings account for about 43% of pollution in the GTHA, while transportation made up 34% and industry about 19%. But of those three, only one is actually getting worse.
The biggest concern right now is transportation emissions. That's the one major source that's trending upward as opposed to downward.
The Atmospheric Fund has identified electric vehicles, or the lack of them, as a big part of that problem. Since the Ford government canceled rebates on EVs last year, sales have plummeted 55%. That puts Ontario well behind the leading provinces, where rebates and incentives live on.
Well, the incentives have been very, very useful to achieve these sales in other jurisdictions, and I think Ontario should have another serious look at it.
It's really difficult, even if you are committed to choosing electric, it's difficult to find one.
Kara Clareman runs a nonprofit that promotes electric vehicles. She says the vanished rebates have made it hard to even find EVs in Ontario, a vicious cycle of declining supply and demand.
When those rebates were canceled, many of the automakers sent their vehicle supply to Quebec, where there are more progressive policies and incentives in place.
The Ford government says it canceled the rebates because they were unfair to northern and rural communities. Still, the province is counting on a major uptake as part of its climate plan. It wants EV sales to go up 3,000% by 2030. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
There's a live shot of our city skyline tonight. It was a mild start to the week, but we're going to see that temperature dip and bring some flurries along with it. Call Light is back after the break with what you need to know.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
The Raptors hosting the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight, and they got off to a really good start. OG Anunoby grabs a loose ball, fires it to Pascal Siakam. Spicy P lays it in there. Raptors keeping up the pace. Norman Powell playing hot, elevating for a nice finish. Then off another Raptors steal. Terrence Davis over to Powell. He knocks down a three. That would give Toronto a 20-point lead at this point. Siakam finishing with a game-high 33 points. The Raptors beat Cleveland 133-113, closing out their three-game homestand. Kelly Kennedy's back with her extended forecast. So seasonal temperatures tomorrow, but then we see a drop later in the week.
That's exactly right, Mike. We're going to see some Arctic air pushing in here, and it's going to settle in for a few days at least. Think about 3. So we'll get into those details and what those numbers are going to look like. It's going to be the wind chill that'll be so significant. Overnight tonight, especially into tomorrow morning, we do have a risk of seeing some flurries, and we'll get a couple of chances at that through the week. Mostly it will be light in intensity around the GTA anyway. Arctic air, though, it is coming for midweek, and it does mean with some breezier conditions into Wednesday. That's when you're going to kind of feel the coldest of it, Wednesday night into Thursday morning. So this system we talked about earlier in the show, it's the one just skirting around the Niagara Peninsula. As it does, it may lay down a few centimeters there and make the morning rush a little bit unpleasant in terms of some slick roadways. Some flurries certainly possible into the GTA, but that should be about it. Then later in the day on Tuesday, we may see a few more flurries coming more so into the evening hours. We'll see the winds start to set up, though, as we go Tuesday into Wednesday. And as they do, then we get into some squalls. You may see some more significant amounts going into cottage country where you could be looking around 10 centimeters or so, and we get into some scattered flurries into Wednesday, into the GTA, and into parts of southwestern Ontario as well. And then we try and shake that off with high pressure in place, but it doesn't necessarily go away in terms of some of the cloud cover. So this is just showing you the snowfall potential between tonight and through the day tomorrow. So it's not getting in up here around Barrie or Mount Forest, what you'll get into as you go Tuesday towards Wednesday with some snow squalls. Just showing you that 2 centimeters possible around Hamilton, St. Catharines, Niagara, you could see about 3 centimeters, and unlikely we'll see more than a dusting towards Toronto. Maybe we'd pick up a centimeter or so there. So some scattered flurries tonight in southwestern Ontario. Yep, that chance, risk is there as well. And then tomorrow you'll get into clearing. Could still have some flurries in the morning, clearing into the afternoon hours, and at least your temperatures bouncing above freezing. Overnight tonight, feeling like minus 13 around the GTA, so think of that for tomorrow morning. Temperatures coming up into the afternoon, still that chance of some scattered flurries. More so we'll be seeing kind of a mix of sun and cloud. Here is that cold Arctic air, though, and some of the numbers to go along with it. Wednesday, minus 5. Minus 15 overnight into Thursday. Thursday still cold, bitterly cold, slightly better by Friday. The weekend, it looks like will improve, Mike.
Oh, bundle up until the weekend arrives. Thanks a lot, Colette.
You're welcome.
Anytime you get to make a difference in someone's life, you want to try and do it, and you want to try and help out.
When we come back, we'll head to SickKids as this year's Leafs try to spread some holiday cheer. Stay with us. It is a tradition that dates back to the late 1920s. Players from the Toronto Maple Leafs visit children at SickKids, and they bring Leaf swag, take pictures, and sign autographs. Here's what Mitch Marner and the new head coach Sheldon Keefe had to say about the experience today.
We're a lot more than hockey players in this locker room. We want to try and do more than just play hockey. We want to try and be a person people can look up to in the community and around the world. And it starts in here. I mean, we just want to come in here and try and make these kids feel better and try and forget about why they're in here. I think the first thing, just seeing all the kids smiling, laughing, just seeing them interact with us and just seeing how much it makes their day better. And I think for us, it's the same thing, how much it makes our days feel better. And, it really makes us, I think, realize how much we can make a difference in someone's life. And like I said, it's always a day I think a lot of us look forward to and look forward to getting here.
We had a good overtime battle last game.
Seeing people here that are fighting, and you see the smiles on their faces, and you recognize just how they're handling tough times. There's a lot to be said for that. And the people that I've met here so far in the short time I've been here are very positive, very upbeat, very happy to see the Leafs here, of course, but also just have a fighting spirit about them, and that's a cool thing to witness.
Nice tradition to continue. Well, before we go, the latest Star Wars film opens later this week. Not that I'm counting the hours or anything like that, but for many fans, some bad feelings about the last installment, The Last Jedi, still linger. Well, tomorrow on Metro Morning, a writer with Now Magazine will help look at why that film was so divisive amongst fans and whether Rise of the Skywalker will truly bring the series to an end. You can listen to that just before the 8 o'clock news tomorrow on CBC Radio 1 here in Toronto. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night.